How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, where today we have a new Dark Souls 3 video where we answer the question, can you beat Dark Souls 3 with consumables only in New Game Plus 7? This challenge is mostly inspired by both the Backlogs and JK Leeds, who did fire bombs only and throwing knives only respectively, and I figured with some of the New Game Plus challenges that I've been doing on my channel, what a perfect time to go ahead and try this. So the rules for this run are going to be anything that does damage has to be a consumable or a throwable, and includes fire bombs, lightning urns, and the variety of throwing knives that are available. This is not necessarily going to be an all bosses run, it's more just going to be a question of can I beat the game itself, which means letting the credits roll, and you'll see why this is not a all bosses run as we move throughout the video. To start, I did a couple of these on a brief live stream, which covered Udex Gunder, Vort of the Boreal Valley, and the Crystal Sage. Everything Deacons and past, I did bespoke YouTube recordings. So, that being said, if you enjoy this, let me know in the comments. Feel free to leave a like, subscription, and if you have any other wacky challenges, specifically in New Game Plus cycles, all the Souls games, let me know what I should tackle next. First up, we fight Udex Gunder, and you'll notice that I have a death counter on screen this time, just because I wanted to share how much suffering went into this challenge. I thought I was going to beat him first try, and for what it's worth, some of the things that I thought about this run going into it, with some of the talismans, I guess they're rings in Dark Souls 3, but like the repeating attacks ring and stuff like the wolf grass sword and Karthus beacon don't actually work with the throwing knives. I thought they did coming into it, but this kind of gives you a taste of what we're going to be doing and the challenges that we're going to face in this run.
Two more, just don't choke. Finish them off with throwing knives. Alright, first boss down. One hit. Or one death, rather.
Second in line is, of course, Vort of the Boreal Valley, and unfortunately we don't have a way to deal dark damage. Just the lightning urns are typically our best choice. I did discover later in some of the bosses that I probably should have been using poison and or bleed using kukris, but the lightning urns do the most damage out of any one-hit consumable in the game. I think they're a little bit better than black fire bombs at max stats. Also important to note that for the first couple of these bosses, I didn't actually have max stats, I was just close to the soft caps, but as I went out through the run, I think starting at Pontiff Sullivan, I did just go ahead and level myself all the way up to maximum level, and you'll see why that's important in a couple of the late game boss fights. All that being said, the Vort fight took about 3 minutes, not too long in comparison to some of the upcoming ones, but it was a pretty easy fight without much resistance.
And there we go, Vort down, nice. I think that was 3 tries it took.
Sage, this is the first boss fight that I really started to employ poison, and I also tried the Vow of Silence because obviously that disables all magic in the vicinity. But this was just a long, drawn-out fight. You see I'm wearing a heavy armor. Difficult, and I thought I was going to have him with one last tick of poison. Unfortunately, it ran out right before he died, so I had to get in there with a couple of throwing knives. But our third boss of the run is dead, with 7 deaths to our name.
Really? Didn't quite kill the Crystal Sage, huh? There we go. Oh boy, that must have taken like 10 minutes.
Next up were the Deacons of the Deep, and these guys are very difficult in high New Game Plus cycles because of their propensity to surround the Archdeacon whenever he spawns in, and that makes things very difficult whenever you're dealing with non-splash damage throwables such as throwing knives or kukris. I actually whittled these guys down a good bit, a couple of times, but kept getting killed by the curse. And just a quick point of note is that the death counter for this fight, I don't think I was properly updating it, as I died over and over and over again. I was doing this on an evening, and I totally forgot to update that one because I was getting frustrated with the fight. Either way, enough of that diatribe. I was able to finally get some good RNG, had a couple of alluring skulls left over, used up all my lightning urns and fire bombs, and was able to get in there with some throwing knives, and after a nearly 20-minute boss fight, the Deacons went down. Our first Lord of Cinder is the Abyss Watchers, and this was actually one of the easiest fights. I was able to get them down in 2 deaths. The real key to this fight is you got to get a quick first phase, and I was able to do so with lightning urns, and in the second phase there are a couple of openings, but obviously the Abyss Watchers are rather fast, so what you have to do is bait out the 3-hit combo where he does a couple of the swings, and then he does his final overhead swing, and you're able to chuck in a black firebomb or firebomb. I got a little greedy towards the end here, but I was able to clutch up, and I took down our first Lord of Cinder. Now it's down to the Catacombs of Carthus. I took a quick stop first to face off against the old Demon King, and this was kind of before I decided whether or not I was going to do an all bosses run. This is when I thought I was going to, so I figured I'll take him on. Also, I wanted to test myself out to see if I could actually beat him in New Game Plus 7 with consumables only. Obviously, he is completely immune to fire. I think he might be very, very resistant. Either way, I didn't bring in any fire bombs. And here we see one of the stars of the run, and something that you're going to see in a couple of upcoming fights that see heavy use. And that is the Church Guardian Shiv. I've never used these before. They take FP to use. I think it's 6 or 8 FP. And they are technically unlimited beyond that. There are a couple of ways that you can infinitely regen FP in the game. Didn't have to employ any of these in this fight, but we're able to get him into his exploded phase, and we had enough kukris to chunk him down that way, and the old Demon King goes down. High Lord Wolnir is not what I would describe as a very difficult fight in Dark Souls 3, especially if you know the mechanics, but I was worried in this run that this was actually going to be unable to be accomplished. Obviously, I haven't employed any of the tactics where you leave a stack of consumables at the fog wall, because I wanted to see if I could face off against all these bosses without having to resort to that, and so far we have been. This fight I was very concerned that we were not going to be able to do enough damage to his rings, and I gotta say, when fighting him, this was one of the sloppiest fights that I think I've ever had. It was also really weird because he got up to the top of the arena basically instantly. He did 2 real quick charge attacks. That fortunately allowed us to stay behind his left arm while there was some skeletons around, and things got very chaotic towards the end. I had to do some menu switches, but we are able to do just enough damage with the remaining kukris, and I had some consumables to spare, so my concerns were unfounded and we were able to take him down first try. From a death counter of 22 all the way up to 35, the true skill check boss of the run is Pontiff Sullivan. Luckily, he does not have a ton of HP, but his clone makes things very difficult. And in this fight, I figured out that this was the first boss of the run that actually was able to dodge out of the way of some of our consumables. Didn't do it every time, but he would do it enough that it would be very annoying. Luckily, he is not immune to either bleed nor poison, so stacking those up is a viable strategy in the first phase, and then chucking in black firebombs and lightning urns as we have space to do so. We got very lucky, had to face tank a couple of hits, and we're running pretty low on some of our Estus flasks, but we were able to clutch it out in the end, and the Pontiff goes down. Our second Lord of Cinder, I went and faced Aldrich, Devourer of Gods, and yes, you are reading that correctly. I had 35 deaths going into the Pontiff Sullivan fight, and Aldrich was a first try. This was again a very chaotic fight, as these long drawn-out fights tend to be. We've got to make good space of the little enclave by the statues, which allow us to stay safe from his arrow rain. We gotta make sure we have both Henri's straight sword and the ethereal oak shield, which give a slow HP regeneration whenever they are equipped. And we have to make good use of our firebombs and lightning urns, making sure to get in attacks whenever there is some space. We got some good RNG towards the end where we were able to chunk down his last bit of HP in just about 30 seconds, which really did us a solid. I think he had around 10% when I started really getting in there and chucking some firebombs, throwing knives, and again our second Lord of Cinder goes down in one try after about 8 minutes in the boss fight. So surely now that we're going to be facing off against Yorm, we're going to have to employ the tactic where you leave a stack of items outside the fog wall, right? Well, I wanted to see if I could do this without doing that, and the real key MVP of this fight is, of course, the Church Guardian Shiv. As Yorm is immune to fire entirely, we've got to have good spacing, and these things tracking are absolutely insane. If you are a couple of feet in front of him and you throw the Church Guardian Shiv, it will basically land on his head no matter what. I got really good at this fight. I did die 9 times, and it was very frustrating at times when I chunked him down to about 30% HP and we got hit. I'm also employing the Tears of Denial miracle because I have enough FP to make use of that. The real tactic is getting a posture break, throwing 2 lightning urns, and then getting in a couple of throwing knives, kukris, or shivs as we can see fit. And after 25 minutes, one of the most difficult fights I've ever done, one of the most tedious fights I've ever done in any Dark Souls game, we're able to take down our 3rd Lord of Cinder, and a huge roadblock. I thought that we were not going to be able to do it in this run, but I'm so glad that we did. Right after Yorm, of course, our next fight is the Dancer of the Boreal Valley, and she took me a couple of tries, I think 4 deaths in total. Luckily, she does not have nearly as much HP as Yorm does, and I think she even has less HP than Aldrich does, although I find the Dancer to be quite a bit more difficult than Aldrich himself. The tactic again here is to make use of the pillars, especially in Phase 2, get in damage where we can. Phase 1, not too bad, you can really take advantage of the grab attack, but she does close distance rather quickly. I was running low on Estus once again here, but I had more than enough to stay comfortable, and we got her positioned in an odd location. Towards the end of the fight, I was actually able to pop an Ember mid-fight, and with some effort and some good positioning, the Dancer goes down, and we are on the home stretch to beating the base game. And I thought Yorm was going to be a roadblock in this run, but I did not expect the struggles that I was going to face against the Dragon Slayer armor. I didn't die too much against him in a couple of my tries, and in fact I think I could dodge most of his attacks in my sleep at this point, because I tried over and over and over again, I think 6 or 7 tries, without using the fog wall trick. But instead of tapping out, I decided, you know what, I want to beat this guy with throwables only, consumables only, and this was the first fight that I went ahead and did that. So again, what you have to do is you push yourself right up against the fog wall, you drop a stack of items, you have to retain at least one, go back to the bonfire, restock your inventory from your endless box, and go back up and leave another stack. So it's a long process, and being that the Dragon Slayer armor is incredibly resistant to lightning, we had to make use of our black fire bombs because they do the most damage. Could have done regular fire bombs as well, but they do about 85 damage as opposed to the 144 that we're able to get with black fire bombs. So again, a very long fight, not the longest, but still almost 8 minutes in the winning run. Not to say anything about some of the interludes that I had where I was fighting him for nearly 20 minutes with just regular throwing knives and kukris and whatnot. But we're able to beat the Dragon Slayer armor, and I can really feel myself loathing and being very nervous for the next fight against Prince Lothric and Lorien. If you thought the Yorm fight was a long, drawn-out process, then I have bad news for you. Lorien and Lothric took me even longer than Yorm, which is astonishing given the fact that Yorm has so much more HP than just about any enemy in this game, especially in New Game Plus 7. The real problem, of course, comes in Phase 2. Phase 1 I got really good at, and I was able to keep a number of Estus flasks on the run that I'm showing right here, which was not actually the winning run. But in Phase 2, when Lorien gets on Lothric's back, he's very difficult to hit with basically anything, and Consumables are one of the more tricky things to hit him. I was able to get him down to around a half of his HP bar, but I ran out of Estus Flask, and I didn't have a Divine Blessing or a Hidden Blessing, which I thought I brought into this run. And after 21 minutes, I died, and I thought about giving up here. But luckily, I came back next time. I was able to do a better run here. And after almost 30 minutes, I don't have the exact time, but I think the fight took me about 28.5 minutes to do. Got some good RNG at the end. We were able to get a splash hit. And finally, our final Lord of Cinder goes down. here we have our final boss of the run, the Soul of Cinder. For the DLC bosses, I thought about doing them, but realistically speaking, I don't think there's any way to do the Frida and Father Ariandel fight. Again, if you've seen, I think J.K. Leeds did it, he was unable to access any of his dropped consumables at the fog wall. Plus, given the fact that Frida is an NPC type enemy, she's going to dodge all around. For the Ringed City DLC, I just don't see a possibility of getting by the Demon Princes. Again, a very similar situation where you can't drop any consumables into the fight. So I figured, you know what, we're just going to beat the base game and call it good. So for the Soul of Cinder, he is obviously a very difficult enemy. Not the toughest in Dark Souls 3, but he is another enemy that can dodge a little bit. He doesn't always do it, maybe about 15% of the throws that I did. For this fight, I just stuck with the Kukris because he actually is able to be bled. I think it happens a couple of times, but either way they prove to be one of the more consistent damage dealing items. Throwing knives were another option here, but I was not really having much success with the urns when I was trying them out in this fight. Again, I tried it for a little bit with the urns and I just quit out because I was like, you know what, this is not going exceptionally well. This fight I played incredibly passive. You know, we gotta wait out opportunities to attack. Phase 1, there's a good amount whenever he does some of his phase transitions. The sorcery phase is another one that's pretty easy to get some damage in, as long as he doesn't shoot a crystal soul spear. And the curved sword, whenever he does his poison attack, another very good opportunity to get some damage in. For phase 2, we got to wait out a couple of different attacks. One is, of course, the 5-hit combo, the Gwyn combo, where he stands still for a couple of seconds and does his Omega attack. You can get in 2 or maybe 3 Kukris during that time. Another good opportunity is whenever he does his Lightning Storm attack. He stands still for a couple of seconds, throws the bolt in the air, and then the homing bolts chase you down. You're able to get 1 in during that time. But I was happy with this fight as well. First try against the Soul of Cinder, New Game Plus 7, consumables only. Took me about 18 minutes to do, and after the fight against the Twin Princes, I was more than happy to take this victory as it is. And with that, we have answered the question, can you beat Dark Souls 3 with consumables only in New Game Plus 7, with a yes. Coming into this run, I honestly didn't think it was going to be possible. I thought that there was going to be no way that we were going to be able to kill Yorm, especially without the fog wall trick, but I was very, very happy that I was able to successfully do so. If you're looking to do this challenge, I would highly recommend against doing so, because some of the boss attempts took me upwards of 15 to 20 minutes, and whenever you die in one of those boss fights, it really feels terrible. But I was able to stick through it, and I'm so glad that I did, under 70 deaths as well. Again, if you enjoyed this video, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or a subscription. Again, if you have any ideas for some challenge runs that you'd like to see, specifically in New Game Plus cycles, I'd love to hear them in the comments. I think I'm going to try an Elden Ring New Game Plus 7 Elden Stars only challenge run. We'll see how that goes. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.